When the EU's institutional leadership came in December 2019, they outlined the ambition of becoming a geopolitical commission. But then, of course, when the member states struggle to find any form of cohesion, it's very difficult to be geopolitical. Geopolitics and playing ball in the international arena requires a degree of unity, and we're seeing that EU member states are really struggling to agree on a common position, despite the fact that some of the challenges in which they need to find a common position come right up to the EU's border. I'm thinking of Turkey's adventurism in the Eastern Mediterranean and in Libya, but also further afield with respect to China's strangling Hong Kong, Russia, the Middle East. Now, of course, there's a history of European divisions on foreign and security policy, but the trend has worsened in recent years for many reasons, one of them being the erosion of trust among the member states after a decade of crisis, and the other being that some governments are exploiting European divisions to sow further divisions and perhaps try and get some national advantages from that. What then happens, though, when a country supports a position that divides the EU, that country is actually playing it to the interests of other powers such as China, Russia, and sometimes even the US, whose goal is precisely to undermine the European Union. And that causes further erosion of trust and complicates decision making. And of course that spectacle is for all to view, so the EU's credibility is very much affected as well. But there are other ways to think about European global power, where the EU is stronger, is more united, and is even effective. And I'm thinking of economic tools. Trade, for instance. We saw that the EU managed to play off the US and avert a trade war with the US quite smartly. It also is shaping global norms through regulation, through trade. It is countering the failure of WTO in terms of global trade by accelerating the process of bilateral and regional trade agreements, which are actually rather important and are reshaping global norms, for instance, on food safety or health. In 2019, the EU published a communication on the international role of the euro. It published a communication which defines China as a systemic rival, has started screening of foreign investments. So there's actually quite a lot that is happening under the competence and the radar screen of the European Commission, where the member states are not divided, and even if they were, the competences lie with the European Commission. So we can talk, rather than talk about geopolitics, it might be more pertinent to define this as geoeconomics, where the EU is using economic tools which so far it treated in a rather technocratic regulatory way. It's actually beginning to treat them in a more political way. Now, the pandemic is accelerating this. The debate is changing in Europe because of the economic recession, because of the need to bounce back, and because of the fear of dependency on China, especially in pharmaceuticals. And therefore, the discussion is actually shifting towards, for instance, supply chains and how that might affect European foreign policy is a spot to watch. The areas that the High Representative Josep Borrell has mentioned, for instance, are EU-Africa and the Mediterranean basin. So he's actually thinking of a different kind of geography to the more global outlook that EU trade has so far pushed. The fact that after the pandemic, the member states and the Commission are still working on the Green Deal and on the digital agenda and have included a foreign policy dimension to this is also quite significant. And then, of course, we have health. In the absence of global leadership, the EU has actually stepped up, is treating health as a global public good, and is providing financial support, not just for the search of a vaccine, but also to work within the framework of the WHO, especially now that the US has announced it wants to step back. So the debate in Europe has shifted. It used to be focused on the goal and the ambition of being a geopolitical commission and of strategic autonomy, intended very much in the security sense, to something that is much more closely tied to economics. And so this requires a much broader understanding of what European autonomy might look like in the months and years to come.